From prestigious skyscrapers whose highest floors are rumored to be roamed by spirits at unrest, to humble but historic lodgings where ghosts tied to former owners wander after dark. Are you ready for some of the most haunted hotels in the United States? Number 5. The historic Olive Hotel. The historic Olive Hotel, located off Main Street in Miles City, Montana, is a contributing property in the Main Street Historic District that was honored with a spot on the National Register of Historic Places in 1988. Historically, construction of this lodging was started in 1898 under one Joseph Layton as the Layton Hotel, but the property was eventually sold to an Albert Kinney in 1908 following the arrival of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railway and new waves of travelers. The hotel was enlarged with a 3-story addition, new entry, and redecorated lobby, and was reopened officially as Hotel Olive. Later the same year, and again in 1912, to accommodate for the rise in popularity of the automobile, 2 fireproof concrete garages were constructed across the alley. Hotel Olive would be passed through a number of owners, and is privately managed to this very day. In the present, this aged lodging remains open, offering a limited number of hotel rooms, apartments, a breakfast restaurant, bar and lounge, casino, event space, and, as persistent fables claim, an assortment of hauntings, with staff and guests describing extreme cold spots, instances of objects moving on their own, and the unnerving sensation in the middle of the night of an invisible form sitting at the feet of patrons' beds. Footsteps are heard from empty rooms, orbs and strange mists are commonly captured in photography, batteries seem to die at abnormal rates, and maids have arrived to locked rooms to find faucets and showers turned on or toilets flushing spontaneously. The most famous legend surrounding this old inn tells the premises is haunted by the spirit of one Olive Kinney, daughter to Mr. A.W. Kinney. Olive's small form has been known to manifest throughout the building in old-fashioned attire, and is especially fond of room 250, where it's said activity can get downright unsettling at times. Number 4. The restaurant and bar at the historic Hotel Broadalbin. The restaurant and bar at the historic Hotel Broadalbin, located off West Main Street in Broadalbin, New York, is a historic landmark building recognized as the oldest hotel in the city, as well as one of the only lodging options in the southern end of the Great Sacandaga Lake. Historically, this structure was first built in 1854 to serve as a glove factory, but in 1881 the property was purchased, expanded upon, and reopened as the Quieto Hotel. In 1898, the Quieto would close its doors, after which Dr. C.H. Finch would begin running a hospital out of its shell, namely for the treatment of alcoholism. Sadly, the good doctor's miracle cure was actually a giant scam that resulted in patients suffering excruciating pain, blindness, or even death. In 1904, the building was once again transformed into a hotel, with a dining area that doubled as a speakeasy through Prohibition. In 2006, the old lot was purchased by Dave and Zoe Thompson and family, who retain ownership to this day, and who would diligently set to work restoring the hotel in its entirety, while operating its central portions as a restaurant and bar. The restaurant and bar at the historic Hotel Broadalbin would open their doors in July of 2019 and remain open into the present, serving annually as a full-service hotel and boasting a restaurant, bar, lounge, and, according to stories from both staff and guests, a string of hauntings, the likes of which are most commonly attributed to the site's days as a hospital. Reports across the property detail objects that move on their own, furniture discovered rearranged and under impossible time frames, lights that turn on and off by themselves, constant electronic malfunctions, and encounters with shadowy figures, orbs and strange mists visible to the naked eye, and apparitions in clothing spanning the eras. Several spirits clad in military uniforms have been spied standing atop the staircase, and a range of phantom silhouettes have been sighted through windows or in rooms that are supposed to be vacant and locked. Lastly, a handful of guests have described the unnerving sensation of being poked at in the middle of the night, or of an unseen presence sitting on their beds. Number 3. The Hassayampa Inn. The Hassayampa Inn, located off East Gurley Street in Prescott, Arizona, is a historic hotel that, since the time of its opening, has been recognized as one of the state's most desirable retreats, as well as for its hosting of a number of notable guests, including Will Rogers, Clark Gable, Steve McQueen, and Georgia O'Keeffe. Historically, fundraising for the hotel's construction was started in 1924 by a group of interests responsible for forming the Hassayampa Hotel Company. Unfortunately, this early association was poorly managed and would later be adopted by the Prescott Kiwanis Club, who would muster up funds necessary to start the long-anticipated construction project by around 1926. The hotel itself would officially open a year later in 1927 and would derive its name from the Hassayampa River, and while it would enjoy some initial success, the lodging would take hard hits from the Great Depression as well as from World War II. Following the war, hotel business would boom, and through the spring of 1975, its basement would host classes for Prescott College. The Hassayampa Inn remains open into the present and, thanks to constant upkeep, has retained its classic appearance with little to no alterations. Paranormal activity at the hotel is suspected to be tied to a popular local legend, telling of a young woman named Faith Summers, who checked into room 426 with her husband. As the story goes, her spouse left to buy cigarettes and didn't return for 3 days, after which, fearing she'd been left, Faith chose to take her own life. Since her passing, both staff and visitors have reported extreme cold spots, the smell of flowers, objects sighted moving on their own, and even encounters with Mrs. Summers' apparition, who's usually sighted clad in a pink dress, holding flowers and crying softly into her hands, and who's been known to vanish when approached. Lastly, several informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, documented instances of televisions turning on and off by themselves, and chilling EVPs, and a handful of male guests have described being awakened to the sensation of a cold form crawling into bed with them in the middle of the night. Number 2. W Minneapolis at the Foshay Tower. W Minneapolis at the Foshay Tower, located off South Marquette Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is a skyscraper that, at 447 feet in height, stood as the city's tallest building at the time of its completion, a mantle it continued to hold until the construction of the IDS Center in 1972. Historically, the Foshay Tower started as a lifelong dream of one Wilbur Foshay, an art student turned entrepreneur, who planned to both work and live off of its 27th and 28th floors. The structure was completed and opened in 1929, but only 2 months following, the stock market would plummet, and the mounting debt Wilbur had incurred through the project would catch up with him, forcing to auction his prestigious creation off. The Foshay Tower would be passed through several owners, and at different times would serve as office space to a variety of businesses and firms. And in 2006, developers Ralph W. Burnett and Minneapolis-based Ryan Companies would begin the restorations and renovations necessary to transform the site into a hotel, which would open as the W Minneapolis at the Foshay Tower in 2008. In 2015, the hotel was sold to Ashford Hospitality Trust. It remains open, boasting a 30th floor observation deck, a prohibition sky bar out of Wilbur Foshay's former bedroom, and, as tale tells it, a number of supernatural infestations, with both staff and guests reporting extreme cold spots, strange knocking sounds and voices heard from rooms that are supposed to be vacant, and instances in which the elevator acts on its own accord, landing on floors sporadically when no buttons have been pressed, and with its doors opening and closing at random. Shadowy figures and misty apparitions have been captured in security footage or spied by guests as they dart around corners, and a number of full-bodied apparitions in old-fashioned clothing have been encountered. Following his selling of the tower, Wilbur Foshay would spend some time in prison for mail fraud and would die penniless and alone in a nursing home in 1957. Ironically, on the 28th anniversary of his old tower's debut, a final legend claims his restless soul returned to his beloved monstrosity, where it continues to roam the 27th and 28th floors. Number 1. The Kansas City Marriott Downtown. The Kansas City Marriott downtown, formerly the Mulebach Hotel, and located off West 12th Street in Kansas City, Missouri, is a notable lodging that served as one of Kansas City's most prestigious and desirable hotels since the time of its opening. Historically, property the hotel now sits on was initially purchased in 1914 by the Mulebach Estate Company, headed by George E. Mulebach, and over the following year, they would begin construction on a 12-story brick building that would open in 1915 as Hotel Mulebach. In 1922, after Joe Sanders and Carlton Coon began broadcasting their Coon-Sanders Original Nighthawk Orchestra nationwide from the hotel, it would earn the title of hosting the very first regular radio program broadcast by a band, paving the way for countless others. In 1931, one Barney Alice would take over management of the business. Through his tenure, the Mulebach would accommodate a number of notable persons, including Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, even Harry S. Truman, who stayed in the hotel's presidential suite so often, it was given the nickname of being the White House West. In 1952, a 17-story annex and parking structure was constructed on site. In 1976, Radisson Hotels would acquire the property, and in 1986, the business would close its doors. In 1996, the Mulebach was purchased by Marriott Hotels and was transformed into an extension of the Kansas City Marriott downtown, which was originally constructed in 1985 as the Vista International. The old lodging remains open into the present, providing luxurious accommodations, alongside a purported jumble of paranormal activity, with staff and guests reporting disembodied voices, crying, whispers, and footsteps from empty rooms. Instances in which objects move on their own, doors that open and close by themselves, faucets in locked rooms found on upon return, and occasions where lights flick off spontaneously, leaving all present in total darkness. Additionally, several informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, orbs in photography and video, and accounts of investigators noting the constant feeling of being watched or even stalked by something unseen. The most famous ghost story surrounding the old Mulebach portion of the Marriott downtown tells of the Blue Lady, a beautiful woman of around 30 in age, clad in a 1920s style dress, with blonde hair tucked up under a fedora. Some have theorized this charming specter might be the phantom of an actress at the theater that once sat adjacent to the hotel, or a former patron forgotten to time, and those who have encountered her have told of a sudden and noticeable drop in temperature, and instances in which she appears frazzled or as if she's searching for something lost. Taking its fascinating history into account, coupled with such a range of chilling local ghost stories, we felt the Kansas City Marriott was the perfect choice as the most haunted hotel in the United States. Thanks for joining us for some of the most haunted hotels in the US. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel deserves a good scare. We'll see you all next time.